Are back with the conversations with the mayor. Call the mayor. We have a little, very, very enthusiastic audience here in our studio, and den study, whatever you want to call it. We showed you a little of it last night. We may show a little more tonight if you're good, and I think I'm going to start tonight with what I guess maybe what shocked me the most. I'm not even sure I can say it shocked me the most. I'm not sure the Biden administration or the Bidenistas can shock me anymore. But it is tragic and inhumane, indecent, and treason to the whole history of our country and the values of our country, the values that Abraham Lincoln said made you a good American, that the Biden administration presented with people who are fighting for their lives, fighting for their children, fighting for their children's future, fighting for the rights that, I don't know, Biden, purportedly a Catholic, has to believe God gave these rights to these people, not governments. The right to practice your religion the way you want, the right to free speech, the right to choose those who govern you, the right to fairness in determining criminal penalties. I mean, since he doesn't provide it in America, I guess it doesn't mean very much to him when he sees these thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people pouring into the streets of Iran, all over Iran. We showed you last night the map. It's virtually 3/4 of the country, and it's expanded today. Or in China, it's about half the country that has ignited with, yes, smaller riots, but very, very intense and very riots, protests with a lot at stake, a lot more than in our country, because your life is at stake. The numbers of people dead are clearly phony. The Chinese government says, I don't even know if they give a number. The Iranian government says 300. The human rights groups say now it's in excess of 600, and all of the sources that I have, which I consider extraordinarily reliable in Iran, say we're getting close to pushing 1,000. The number of prisoners they put at 1,800. It's probably more like 5,000. All you have to do is look at the videos that are particularly pretty fulsome in Iran. You can see that people are being beaten on the street, shot on the street. They don't even wait to take him into. They don't even wait to take him into court. And where's Biden? The Bidenistas, the American press, they were all involved for Ukraine, right? I mean, we've given Ukraine billions and billions of dollars to fight Soviet oppression. But what, the people of Iran and China are not worth as much as the people of Ukraine? We can't even give them like a strong, unequivocal vote of support. I mean, we're so afraid of offending the Ayatollah and Xi Jinping that we can't even say strong words about it, the way Reagan did for solidarity, and the way Trump did for the 2018 Iranian uprising, which really lasted until the pandemic. And it's the reason why what you're watching in Iran, don't mistake this for just protests. This is a revolution. The prior protests there reached 190 cities. This is at 80 already. it's engaging a whole other group of society in this one. The first set of protests, which really began back in 2014 and were killed by Obama when he didn't support it because Obama was clearly allied with the regime of terror. Otherwise, he would not have given them billions of dollars in cash or hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. You don't give terrorist countries hundreds of millions of dollars in cash because unless you are a nitwit, you know the money is going to be used to kill people. And some of their prime targets were Obama's own citizens. You want to draw the conclusions from that? I mean, they're horrible conclusions, aren't they? About the so-called left-wing Saul Alinsky trained prince. But Biden is no different. He's got this love affair with Iran, which is the largest sponsor of terrorism in the world. There's a sickness within the Democrat Party at the highest levels. We know about the sickness of corruption. The hard drive that was suppressed proves it over and over again. But there's a sickness of carrying out the Marxist agenda. They're doing it. They're doing it in every respect possible. And they're carrying out the Soros one world agenda and the Klaus Schwab one world agenda. What they're not doing is carrying out the American agenda of a sovereign government.
Klaus Schwab was seen in Washington, D.C. today, Mayor.
What was he helping the Iranian? Was he trying to get help for the Iranian government to kill the protesters? That would be sort of in line with his thinking, wouldn't it? He despises American nationalism, and we kiss his backside. No, I don't kiss his backside. Those influenced by communism kiss his backside. Klaus Schwab has probably been one of the most destructive forces in probably in international affairs in the last 20 to 30 years, and helped greatly in China's infiltration of American companies. I mean, I would say that I probably have never heard anything more disturbing than yesterday when John Kirby, who I believe was an admiral in the United States Navy, couldn't bring himself to agree with the United States soccer team's changing the Iranian flag and removing the symbol of the reign of terror of the Ayatollah. Remember, the Iranian soccer team did that, and who knows what's going to happen to them in Iran. They're certainly going to be tortured. Their families, some of them have already been arrested. And could they be killed? Yeah, they could be killed. Would that be too much of a international incident that the Ayatollah and his henchmen, the criminals that surround him, might avoid? I don't know. But these people don't have a life left. I was hoping they would defect and we would give them asylum. It'd probably be the best asylum claims that we've granted in a long, long time, since we give it to anybody who wants it at the border. Millions and millions for nothing, who aren't really seeking asylum. They just want to come to the United States. But I mean, I want you to listen. I'm going to play this as loud as I can. I want you to listen to John Kirby, for whom I do not have any particular dislike or like, or he seems, this is not a high bar, but he seems a lot straighter than the usual mouthpiece, or the two of them that Biden has had. But here he embarrassed our country. I don't like people who embarrass our country. And he embarrassed our soccer team, who put their necks on the line to do this, and he couldn't back them up. What's wrong with the Biden administration? That's going to be my question. I wish you would text into me and tell me what you think, but let me see if I can make this as loud as possible. And you can hear John Kirby Uh, Basically, for an admiral, and for me to say this about an admiral takes a lot. This is an exercise in being a coward.
The U.S. men's national soccer team sort of an image of the old flag before then including the Islamic Republic symbol. Does the White House have any comment on that decision?
No, actually, we don't. And this isn't the kind of thing that the White House would comment on. USA Soccer is a private entity, and they make their own decisions about those kinds of things. And we wouldn't comment on that. We wish them all the best tomorrow.
He wouldn't comment on the U.S. soccer team removing the symbol of terrorism that has resulted in the death of an enormous number of young American men and women whose families are living without them because of the of being murdered by the Iranian Quds Force at the direction of the Ayatollah and under the leadership of General Soleimani, the Iranian general that was killed by Trump with tremendous criticism from the demented one in the White House, who said that he didn't think it was necessary. Remember, the demented one in the White House also didn't think we should take out bin Laden. I'm not really capable of responding to that. Too personal. I'm not really capable of responding to it except to say to my fellow citizens, how the hell did you elect him? I mean, even though you were deprived of most of the hard drive, I get it. You didn't have the whole thing, but you had enough. God, the guy didn't come out of his basement. He thought his wife was his sister. He liked little children touching the hair on his legs. What the hell's wrong with you? Do you just vote Democrat without thinking about it? You sure do in Chicago, where you've been doing it for 50 years, and every weekend is murder time, particularly for young black men. Nobody cares. What's this Kirby all about? You can't comment? You can't comment when your soccer team stood up with an act of courage against tyranny, against a regime that killed Americans, and you were an officer in the United States military? These people killed people you were responsible for, Kirby. What did you do? Give up your soul? I mean, it's the same thing Biden would have said. It's the same thing they would all say. Who do they support? Iran? It seems like they do. They want to give them money. They gave them money. They gave them money that they had to know was going to kill Israelis and Americans. They got that on their conscience. How did we elect them? People are being killed in the street in Iran. You saw the videos last night. We could show them to you again. Now we go to China. My goodness. The Republicans want to hold hearings to find out if Biden is compromised by China. We really need hearings? Why don't they just look at the hard drive? $31 million to the Biden crime family from China. Joe getting an office in the Chinese Communist company. The main office, the big guy. One of his partners is one of the chief Chinese communist spies. I don't know. What am I, a fool? Are we fools? He's not compromised by China? I mean, what did China have to give him to compromise him? When did any American president ever get millions from one of our enemies? I hope not too many. You think Ronald Reagan got money from the Soviet Union? You think John Kennedy did? What do you think would have happened if John Kennedy had gotten money from the Soviet Union, even though he was very young, very popular, in those days a Democrat? They'd have put him in jail for the rest of his damn life. That's what they would have done. We have this 22-year-old young woman, Masa Amini. 2.5 months ago, she's slaughtered by the Iranians because a little hair is sticking out. And we've had uninterrupted protests on the part of brave people that hold inside themselves the values of America, which the Biden administration has completely double-crossed. And the same thing is going on in China. Here's the conclusion of the New York Post editorial today. They're talking about Iran and China. These protesters are right, and the president should start by saying so. President Biden and company won't say it out loud because they fear offending Z. Who's running the United States, Biden or Z? Sounds to me like Z got his money's worth, huh? Wow. You know what I like? I like the people in China. It's China, right? In China, where they're holding up the white paper. It doesn't say anything, but you go to my podcast at rudygiulianics.com. We'll tell you the whole background of that. We'll tell you the whole background of that and what that could mean for us as well. We should thank them because they've got the guts in some cases to do what we're not doing. They got the guts to do what we didn't do when we went like sheep to the slaughter during the pandemic. I mean, Democrat governors didn't show this tendency in locking people up in Michigan and locking people up in New York and locking people up in California and locking people up in Illinois and then going out on the town and doing whatever the hell they wanted to do.
Mayor, they literally have drones in China over these apartment buildings, making sure people stay inside, making announcements to people. Drones. Just putting on announcements, telling people stay inside, don't come out. Someone joked if they tried that in the U.S., these drones wouldn't last more than a couple seconds in the air; they'd be shot out of the sky.
You want to know the significance of our founding fathers and how they have created liberty throughout the world, not just in America? I just read you a little excerpt. This could be written about movements for liberty and liberation all throughout the world, because America is at the core of all of them since America fought the War of the Revolution. And the great words were written into our founding documents by Thomas Jefferson and James Madison and Alexander Hamilton. And the great leadership shown by George Washington. Men we should respect despite their frailties. You want to get rid of something that's associated with slavery, you don't go after Washington and Madison and Jefferson, who had their issues with slavery. They couldn't do away with it, but they had their issues with it. And they built words in the Constitution that were poison pills against slavery. The Democratic Party didn't do that. The biggest supporter of slavery of any institution in the history of America is the Democrat Party. 100+ years of slavery, racism, the Ku Klux Klan, Jim Crow, right down to Biden's best friends. Maryam Rajavi, who was the leader of the main dissident movement and the government in waiting, pointed out very recently in an explanation of her intellectual background and that freedom is a universal feeling. I read many books about the changes and revolutions in many other different countries, including America, where George Washington stood up to the British at that time. While he didn't have anything, he didn't have any forces to speak of. And then she concludes, tyranny cannot last forever. That's a woman we should support. She has American values. Kirby sounds like he's in doubt. No doubts. Not about America. No doubts. So let's take a look at how we have been infiltrated by China. I have a little quote here from Tom Friedman. Do you know who Tom Friedman is? Tom Friedman is, oh my goodness, the New York Times people, they think he's like a god. Tom Friedman was right once about 45 years ago. I'm not sure what it was about. He is conflicted. I mean, the guy loves America, but he is with the New York Times, and every day they teach him to hate America. So he's got that conflict going on. But how about this? Tom Friedman wished in a writing that he did called "China for a Day." He hoped that we could implement the right solutions. America, the World Economic Forum's Klaus Schwab recently praised China as a role model for other nations, and much of the West's initial COVID policies was based on China's. We have these corporate people and political people who worship at the shrine of Klaus Schwab, and China should be a role model. Killing 80 million people doesn't deprive them of being a role model. No, trying to eliminate the Uyghur people and doing it right now in front of our eyes doesn't eliminate them as a role model. Spreading CCP virus all over the world doesn't eliminate them as a role model. What the hell is wrong with you, Klaus Schwab? I know what's wrong with you, and you know what's wrong with you, and your friend Soros. Well, I think if this hasn't taken the lid off the great movement toward communism, nothing has. Nothing has. I mean, if you don't realize that this country is on an express train led by an incompetent, senile, demented old man named Biden toward communism, with a bunch of Bidenistas who knows what they are or who they are, then I don't know what else will prove it to you. China's vaccine was a joke. Didn't help anybody or anyone. Beijing has everybody under surveillance now, including us, by the way. They have drones flying around Washington, New York, and elsewhere. They've got police here that keep track of the Chinese to see if they can grab them and take them back to China. We let them do it. And it's those blank pieces of paper. I want you to go to my podcast. Maybe in America, we'll start holding up blank pieces of paper, because although the censorship is not quite at the same level, we got a pretty heavy censorship going on here that in a few years could reach the Chinese level. Well, the U.S., beat Iran in the World Cup, and we were very happy about that. Although Christian Pulisic made a really heroic goal because he was injured himself, and we only had one goal in 3 games. He got it, and it was the most important goal since the hockey team in 1960 did the Miracle on Ice. On the other hand, we had a team here that we've got to pray for. That is the Iranian team, who put up a great fight, given the pressure they're under. I mean, these men on that field, it's a little different. The people playing for America know they're going to come back, and nobody's going to kill them or their families. The people playing for Iran have no idea whether they're going to be killed, tortured, put in prison, have all their property taken away. And they sure as hell, they don't have the backing of the president of the United States, Biden, who everybody in Iran knows has a soft spot for the regime and wants to do a nuclear deal with them and is willing to give them cash in order to do it. Cash that they will give to Hezbollah, Hamas, kill lots of Jews, kill lots of Israelis, and kill lots of Americans and others who are our allies. The niece of the supreme leader of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been arrested for opposing him. The families of the Ayatollah Khomeini oppose him. The families of the first prime minister, Rafsanjani, oppose him. in much stronger language. Well, Biden doesn't oppose him at all. Biden has said some useless words about the protesters and nothing about the horrible conditions under which they live. Let me tell you, this is a revolution in Iran, and it cannot be ignored. These people will not stop. These protesters will not stop until they're free. It has affected too much of the country. It's affected not just too much of the country geographically, it's affected too much of the country ethnically, religiously, and in terms of various strata of society. It's brought together prior enemies who are now friends, and Miriam Rajavi, who is the leader of the Iranian group in captivity that has a government put together, very competent government put together that could act as a transition over 9 to 10 months to a government with already a statement of principles laid out and voted on by thousands of people and approved by representatives from almost every European government, as well as a bipartisan group of United States members of Congress, both retired and sitting. And that is a government that is based on electing your leaders, most importantly, human rights, rights for women, equal rights for women. Please know they practice what they preach. The MEK leadership is an equal number of men and women, just about. The women fight with the men. I've watched them get trained. Some of them are better. This is not any reduction of standards, believe me. These women can fight because they're fighting for their lives. They're fighting for their children. They're fighting for their fathers and mothers who were tortured by the Ayatollah. And what do they get from the United States? Oh, we don't know what to say. We don't want to offend. We want a nuclear deal. Yeah, we want to give them another couple $100 million by airplane so that they can kill more Israelis and stuff. We don't, This is going to end badly for the Ayatollah. It has to. People can only take this kind of oppression for so long. And these are intelligent. These are well-educated. And these are good people. Really good people. Better than some of our own. Now, let me give you one thing, and then we'll go to Ted. Little notice, but of great significance, is an article in the Wall Street Journal by Walter Russell Mead. It's a short article. It's just a page or two, but it says something that could make the difference in what's going on with China. Remember that line from Tora, 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 or Pearl Harbor, or maybe even Midway? I'm not sure, but they use the line a lot. It's maybe it was said by the Japanese admiral, maybe not. But at the end of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and that was, successful, but not completely successful. The admiral says, "I fear that we have awakened a sleeping giant." Well, the sleeping giant here is, strangely, the pacifist Japan. Since the war, Japan has largely followed a very strict pacifist approach. Over the last several years, they've developed more of a military, more of an air force, actually now quite respectable and bigger. Now, with the coaxing of Prime Minister Abe, and with the now complete support of Prime Minister Fumio Kishida, who was supposed to be a little bit more of a dove, who turns out to be a little bit more of a hawk than Abe. They are now going to make a massive military investment, despite the fact that the country's economy is suffering. In fact, the latest public opinion poll has the support for it over 60% of the Japanese people. So unless these are politicians that don't read their people correctly, they got the point. And this comes about because of China's hostility, China's increased militarism, China passing the United States in terms of the largest navy in the world, China's threats toward Taiwan. Meanwhile, the United States has reduced its military budget. Are we deliberately selling out the country? China has passed our navy, and we're not going to do anything about it? We're just going to hand it over because China gave Biden money? I mean, it's just crazy. They're going to double their military budget in Japan. And let me tell you something. You've got to know the history of Japan and China. There are a lot of people in China that are, you know what, in their pants. This is 1,000 years, China and Japan. And when they go to war, Japanese are the warriors. The Chinese are the victims. They fear Japan more than they do the United States. It's a historical fear, a genetic fear. Japanese are, when they want to be, could be among the most successful warriors in the history of the world. Little Japan dominated Asia, and the Japanese Navy dominated Asia. It's kind of like an analogy to the United Kingdom and England and Europe, and how it, it's just got to be a lot better because it's a lot smaller. But this is a major change. Frightening to South Korea, too, by the way, for other reasons we'll go into at another point. So let's see, what do we have? And then I want to talk a little about Alvin Bragg, who made a complete...
Worst president ever is trending on Twitter. It's all about Biden being the worst president.
So we are there. It is trending on Twitter that Biden is the worst president ever. Wow, I bet that would have been taken off Twitter about a year ago, huh?
Month ago.
Yeah. Wasn't the New York Post taken off Twitter?
Yes.
The oldest newspaper in America?
Yes.
With the most relevant information about a presidential candidate ever?
Yes.
When was there ever hard and fast documented evidence that the candidate for president had taken money from a dozen different countries, many of them straight out and out, admitted, proven bribes? Never.
Thanks for joining us on America's Mayor Live. Comment below your name and where you're tuning in from. We love to read some of those off during the live stream. Also, of course, come in with your questions, and we will make sure we ask those questions. We get those questions to the mayor, and he will answer as many as he can. Mayor, have you been to Japan?
I have many times. Yeah, I had some businesses in Japan, security businesses in Japan, between 2002 and about 2015, 14. I think I've made about 8 or 9 trips there. And after I got used to my first trip there, I was a little disoriented, kind of like Lost in Translation. Did you see the movie Lost in Translation? It's a great movie to see if you go to Japan, although Japan has changed somewhat from back then. Since all the signs then were in Japanese, and you're used to going to a country like, France or Italy, and they're in both, you feel kind of disoriented.
There's no English.
And the Japanese people at first seem to be cold and remote. But when you go there more than 1 or 2 times and you start to meet them, first you realize they love Americans. They do not, and we can thank General MacArthur for that, who has a very different view because of the left wing and the communists here in America, who painted him very differently. But there's a big statue to MacArthur in Tokyo, and they attribute to him their amazing turnaround after the devastation of World War II and the fairness with which they were treated by Americans. And second, they are warm, generous, good people, strong, and boy, do we need this, strong family values. I don't know, are you allowed to say family values now, or has our communist government, I'm sorry, the Biden government prohibited that?
Can you talk about some of the cultural differences between Japan and China?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, Japan is a much more singular ethnic group, whereas China is like Russia. I mean, you almost have a different language in different parts of China. I mean, it's. I know Italians would be somewhat familiar with this because they have different dialects in different parts of Italy, because Italy was a group of nation states until 150 years ago. But China was very different. China was very separate, and the languages are to the extent where they understand each other. They speak a different Chinese, depending on maybe, and I'm not as familiar with this as I should be, but there may be 20 to 30 different languages in China that are a form of Chinese, many of which are completely indistinguishable one to the other. So it's a very, yes, a very big country of 1.4 billion, but it's divided up, even among the Chinese, into very, very different groups of Chinese. Second, it has a large number of other ethnic groups within China. So, for example, this whole situation with the Uyghurs is a Muslim problem. The Chinese do not take Muslims lightly, and feel that Muslims are not loyal Chinese, and the Uyghurs particularly upset them, and they want to eliminate them completely. Just no more Uyghurs. We'll just wipe out the race, the religion, the ethnic group. Let's just get rid of them. They do a pretty good job with Christians, you should know. I mean, they don't like Christians very much. The Pope, foolishly, and who am I to disagree with the Pope? But if I agreed with this Pope, I would violate my conscience. The Pope allows the Chinese government to name the bishops.
Say Lala says hello from Tokyo. She's tuning in right now from Tokyo.
Yeah, two different countries. You cannot possibly equate Japan is an extraordinarily well-organized country, as well as an extraordinarily well-organized group of people. China is a polyglot, massive polyglot that almost was never a nation, really. It was a group of large, separate groups that couldn't even talk to each other. So even now, it's not really a coherent.
Is the government, the powers that be, the Communist Party leadership, are they from one of these groups?
No, the Communist Party. People should understand that the Communist Party has done everything it can to destroy Chinese culture, as they did Russian culture. The basic tenet of Marxism is that any culture, any nationalism is inconsistent with socialism. You can't be an American. You can't be a Russian. You can't be a Chinese. You can't be a Greek. You've got to be tied to international socialism, the Internationale, which is how Soros and Klaus Schwab fit into it, because their mission in terms of infiltrate is to create one world. Soros has been quoted any number of times talking about how dangerous American nationalism is. Now, what is American nationalism dangerous for? America's not Nazi, and America's not going to. Nationalism doesn't create fascism. Fascism is an offshoot of socialism, by the way. The Nazi Party was a socialist party. People think it's the opposite of communism. But like hell, it's the opposite of communism. People don't even know, because they don't know history anymore, that Hitler and Stalin were allies. And
Stalin turned on Hitler?
No, Hitler turned on Stalin. Stalin was quite content to be in an alliance with Hitler, who wanted to slaughter and eliminate the Jews. So please get your head straight about communism. They want to destroy anything that has to do with the prior culture. So what was the Cultural Revolution about? When 40 million Chinese were, the Cultural Revolution is very simple to understand. It was to eliminate the Chinese culture, Chinese music, Chinese books, Chinese religion, Chinese families. Families are big enemies of communism. That's why you find among the number 2 tenet of Black Lives Matter is to destroy the nuclear family. People wonder, where did that come from? I wonder where that came from. It came from Karl Marx, you idiots. They even tell you they're Marxist. And Soros is their biggest contributor. Got it figured out now? I'm sorry. I shouldn't be that sarcastic, but.
So, and of course, the Cultural Revolution taking place 60s, 70s with under Mao in China.
Yeah. This is the.
Finally tore down capitalists, right? They wanted to take down.
They wanted to move to capitalism. Mao said, "Yeah, you want to move to capitalism? You're not going to be alive. You're going to be dead." The casualties were in the multiple millions. People say as high as of the 80 million Chinese that were killed, maybe a third were killed during the Cultural Revolution. I mean, Xi has done his share of killing. He wants to wipe out the Uyghur people, but at the same time, he does a pretty good job on the Falun Gong. Now, he keeps them alive because he takes their organs. He puts them in concentration camps, and he operates on them and takes their organs and sells them on the black market. The Chinese. Now, yeah, you would say, oh, that can't be. The country spent 20 years killing little girl babies. Do you get it? I mean, when Fauci said, oh, the Chinese would never do this with CC, they wouldn't kill their own people. It's probably the most revealing thing that guy ever said about his affinity for communism in China. Because he's too smart not to know that this country slaughters its own people in numbers unheard of, even by Stalin and Hitler.
Is that part of the problem here, Mayor? I think back to my education, K through 12, we don't really learn about these sorts of this part of the global history, right?
Yeah. We went to, as we often do, we went too far in our attempt to circumvent the Soviet Union. We made friends with China, and we were sold on the idea that China was a country we could do business with, a country that was softer, more businesslike, more willing to be reasonable than Russia or the Soviet Union. And what we found out is it's just the opposite.
That started with Nixon, correct?
Yeah, the Chinese Communist Party was significantly more vicious than the Russian Communist Party, significantly more homicidal, significantly more dedicated, and significantly more removed from Chinese culture. You look at Putin. If you really want to understand Putin, people who tell you that Putin wants to reestablish the Soviet Union have no idea of Russian history. Putin wants to reestablish the Russian Empire. He wants to be the Tsar, not Stalin. Putin hates Stalin. You know why he hates Stalin? Because Stalin tried to wipe out Russian culture. He loves, to the extent he can love anything, Russian culture. So when you look at the countries he really covets, it's not the extra countries that the Soviets had, like Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia. There's no desire that I can tell of him wanting them. If he wanted to establish the Soviet Union, that's what he would be looking at. But he's looking at a basic country that's at the core of the conflict about what it is to be Russian. The Kiev Rus. That's a heck of a history that maybe I'll do a special on. It goes back 1,000 years. The question is, where did Christianity start in that area of the world? Well, it started in Kiev, but were they Russians or were they Ukrainians? Or is it the same thing? So it started in Kiev and then it moved to Moscow. So is Kiev part of Russia, or is it a separate ethnic group known as the Ukrainians? A difficult historical issue. Putin, of course, is quite biased, has written maybe somebody else wrote it, but a very well-written treatise on this about a year and a half ago. Good deal of fake history in it, not as bad as 1619. I mean, Putin, in his work on the confusion between Ukraine and Russia is far more accurate than the New York Times anti-American sellout who wrote 1619, which I don't think it has a fact in it that's even close to true. Whereas Putin at least puts in some facts that are actually true and then exaggerates them.
I hear you talk about a world leader writing a treatise, and then I imagine our current president trying to.
He would plagiarize it like he did in law school.
Of course. So a lot of questions coming in, Mayor. Here's one, just asking how you doing tonight.
Well, how do I look? I'm doing pretty well, right? We're knocking them out of the ballpark, these communists.
So lots of questions coming in.
You gotta listen. I gotta tell you about my district attorney, because you may have a district attorney like him. I live in Manhattan. We have a district attorney named Alvin Bragg. I used to be the chief United States prosecutor in this very territory, probably the most famous and the most successful. And now we have the worst ever in the history of New York, Alvin Bragg. I'm going to give you a statistic that is impossible for me to have imagined when I was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, and Bob Morgenthau ran the best district attorney's office in the country, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which previously had been run by Hogan and by presidential candidate Tom Dewey. It was a great office. It was, I think, although I'm not as much of an expert on DA's offices as I am U.S. attorney's offices, it was the premier district attorney's office in the country, one block away from the premier U.S. attorney's office in the country, the United States attorney's office for the Southern District of New York. Bob had been had my job. I worked with Bob for many, many years. He even hired me once. He was a great district attorney, and his predecessor, Frank Hogan, was a great district attorney, and Tom Dewey was a great district attorney. And the office had an esprit de corps unmatched by any district attorney's office in the country. This guy has ruined it. He's ruined it. I can't give you all the details, but when he came in, the first thing he did is put out a manifesto that he's not going to prosecute about 2/3 of the crimes, no misdemeanors. He wasn't even going to prosecute resisting arrest, which means, try to beat the hell out of any cop that arrests you. I won't prosecute you, because he doesn't like cops. He really doesn't like cops. And let me just give you his results after 1 year in office. Crime is up over 30%. Subway crime is up over 40%. Let me get these statistics right, because they're almost impossible to believe. He has declined to start half of the felony cases brought to him by the police. Half of them. And then when he brings the other half, he loses half of them. Now we take misdemeanor cases. He takes only 29% of the misdemeanor cases brought to him. And he loses more than half of them, which means his conviction rate is below 50%. I will do some research. I don't know if it's possible to do this. I've never heard of a district attorney's office with a conviction rate less than 70%. The conviction rate, Judge Janine Pirro was the district attorney in Westchester during a great deal of time when I was the U.S. attorney in the Southern District. I've forgotten exactly her numbers. She put them up on Fox the other day in a fury about this guy Bragg, basically saying he's an accomplice to murder, because he puts murderers or people that are capable of it back out on the street, as well as other criminals. There's one person he put back out on the street who beat the living daylights out of his girlfriend. He was let out with no bail, and then he proceeded within less than a day to kill her. I mean, everybody in the courthouse knew he was going to go beat her again, but Bragg let him out, because the criminal justice system's unfair. Who's it unfair to? It's unfair to the victims. It's unfair to the people in New York City who are getting killed today that weren't getting killed when I was the mayor, or Bloomberg, or anybody with half a brain or a conscience. So he's lost less than half of his cases. He should be removed for incompetence. A district attorney who can't win the vast majority of his cases is incompetent. Now, he's also ideologically anti-American. He's also violated his oath of office. He takes an oath of office to uphold the laws, not to undermine the laws. He doesn't get to say, we don't prosecute fare beaters. We don't prosecute people who jump over the turnstile and don't pay. The legislature gets to decide whether that's a crime or not. We're a government of laws, not a government of communists. I was going to say of men, but decent men wouldn't do this. It's indecent, immoral men who do this. Why is subway crime up? Why do people do the things they do now that are so bold? I know plenty about crime, and I had a lot more murders to deal with than this guy has. And I prosecuted a lot of cases he wouldn't even know how to prosecute. He wouldn't even understand them. I'd have fired him so fast if he was in my office, it would have made a head spin. This guy is getting my citizens in New York killed by his incompetence. Incompetence in the form of a district attorney leads to death. Look at Philadelphia with a Soros-purchased prosecutor for Philadelphia. Bragg and Krasner have in common millions of dollars contributed by George Soros, who doesn't like American nationalism and would like to make us part of one world.
Mayor, we're getting some questions here, some real good ones.
When are we going to get them out?
Just a few minutes left. Thanks for joining us. Please visit RudyGiulianiCS.com. That's RudyGiulianiCS.com. And Mayor, what does the CS stand for?
Common sense.
Go to the website, check out all the podcasts. At least 2 new ones a week and some very, very strong recent content. You'll want to check that out.
I would also like to take you through an Alvin Bragg case because these things come together. Communists and corruption are synonymous. You can't be a communist without being corrupt. So let me take you through this case. It's very, very intriguing. You have the large numbers. He loses half his cases. People are getting slaughtered in New York. Auto theft is up 100% because he doesn't do anything about auto theft. Property crime, you might as well just forget it. He's just not going to prosecute it. He lets people out. I mean, even when he's not doing the things that he announces, he's always giving lighter sentences, letting people out. There must be 7,000 to 10,000 people on the street right now victimizing my citizens that would have been in jail when I was the mayor, or when Bloomberg was the mayor and Kelly was the police commissioner. But listen to this. Alvin Bragg filed a motion on Monday to dismiss the murder indictment of Tracy McCarter. Now, Tracy McCarter claims that she committed, she killed her husband because of self-defense, because of spousal dispute. She now claims that he actually fell on the knife. That's what she claims. The judge has withheld a decision on Bragg's motion to dismiss. So you say, what is it based on? First of all, she didn't testify. So we don't. So what is he basing dismissing it on? His predecessor brought the indictment, and his predecessor was pretty much a wild and crazy, silly liberal, but not lawless like this guy. And a judge had previously, when this case was challenged before, inspected the grand jury minutes and found them to be sufficient. Another judge, Judge Diane Kiesel, rejected 2 of Bragg's attempts to allow the defendant to plead to much lesser charges, finding both proposed dispositions illegal. During his campaign for district attorney, he took a position on the case. Bragg took a position on a pending case. He said, "I stand with Tracy," implying he would dismiss what he called the unjust case against McCarter. I'm reading from the New York Post. It appears to be an editorial. Oh, I'm sorry. No, it's from Jim Quinn. Well, even more important, Jim Quinn, who was the executive district attorney in the Queens DA's office, a very, very good district attorney's office, even to this day, with a very solid district attorney, where he served for 42 years. So this is a man who knows what he's talking about, and probably, without any doubt, not a Republican, because Hochul, our excuse for a governor, thinks it's a Republican. The whole crime thing is a Republican plot. But Mr. Quinn points out that during the campaign, he alleged that this was an unjust case against McCarter, and that he would drop it if he won. Shortly thereafter, he got a $500,000 contribution from a Color of Change, an advocacy group that was arguing for the dismissal of McCarter's case, and I don't know how much from Soros, but probably in the millions. And they were because of this position that he took. Well, first of all, as Mr. Quinn says, you don't take a position on a criminal case when you're running for office at all. Whether you get money or not, you don't take a position on a criminal case. It creates the appearance of impropriety. I go a little further than Mr. Quinn. I'd say it's improper and unethical. And as somebody who's been suspended because I'm a danger of creating a riot, even though a judge found and dismissed the case against me as having anything to do with the January 6th situation, the Bar Association in New York, which is left wing of left wing, continues to suspend me. My lawyers will now get very mad that I have attacked the Bar Association. You think I expect a fair hearing from them? Give me a break.
Thanks for
I'm not stupid, and you're not going to cut me off now. The appearance of impropriety. It's not the appearance of impropriety, Jim. It's impropriety with in capital letters to say, I'm going to let somebody that's been indicted out when you're running for office. But then you get $500,000 from the advocacy group, and you get $1 million from Soros. That's not bribery. What the hell's bribery? The mere fact that he's been in office 11 months and is still struggling with this case suggests there's more substance to it. Bragg should have recused himself from any final decision making. Of course he should. And then he kind of softens up a little. Bragg handled this terribly. It looks sloppy at best and crooked at worst. That's a nice way to put it. I think it looks crooked as hell. Okay, Hochul, dismiss him. He loses half his cases. He's an incompetent district attorney. Obviously, this is not the work he was cut out for. You can't lose half your cases. I mean, it's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. It's a joke, except people are dying because of this joke. This is because we've gone communist and left-wing in New York. It may be that this is not a quid pro quo for a campaign contribution, concludes Mr. Quinn, but it sure looks bad. I would say, but it sure looks like one. Kind of looks like what Biden did with the president of Ukraine. Maybe it runs in the family called the Democrat Crooked Party, the party of Tammany Hall, the party of slavery, the party of the Clinton grifters grown up to international criminals, and the party of the only president I know of who spent a lifetime of crime and became president of the United States. Maybe there were others who made millions and millions selling their office. When you have that kind of corruption at the top, you have the kind of crime we have in this country today. It's got to be stopped. Yes, sir.
Oh, we're just a couple minutes left, Mayor. Just wanted to let you know we're winding down here, and if anyone has any questions, get those in now. And please visit rudygiulianics.com, rudygiulianics.com, and listen to WABC Radio by going to WABCradio.com, or or listening to it over the air here in the New York market from 3 to 4 p.m. every weekday for the Rudy Giuliani Show. So that is 3 to 4 p.m. on weekdays, and that's over the air. And then our live streams are weeknights at 8 p.m. right here on the platform you're watching on. So comment below, share us your thoughts and questions. Mayor, what are your final thoughts this evening?
My final thoughts are for you, the American people, to be one with the people of Iran and the people of China who are fighting for what we had to fight for, and what we may be fighting for now in a somewhat different way, a peaceful way: freedom. A lot of our freedom has been taken away during the pandemic, a lot more than I think we realize. The Biden administration has trashed the United States Constitution. It's a mere figment of what it used to be. When they can invade lawyers' offices, when they can raid people in the middle of the night and then leave people who are obvious, notorious criminals free, we're not the America that you and I want to pass on to our children. So, but we have the power in this country, and they don't have that right now in Iran and China. We have the power to change it. And we've got the ability to organize and make sure we change it. People of Georgia, any of you in Georgia that are listening to it, you got a real opportunity to change it. Vote for Herschel Walker. Don't buy this Warnock thing. Warnock is one of the furthest left. He was a defund the police, hate the police. He is responsible with others like Stacey Abrams for the fact that Atlanta is one of the most dangerous cities in America. People in Atlanta are getting killed in large numbers. The corruption in Atlanta is disgraceful. Please vote for Herschel Walker. Don't give Schumer any more power than he has right now. Gosh almighty, he's done enough damage to our country. At 50-50 and with a Republican House, we can at least contain the express train to the destruction of our way of life. And then we can work hard to get a Republican president and straighten this thing out. That's what we have in America that those poor people in Iran and China don't have. So even though our president isn't with them 100%, or even 2%, even though we know his sympathies lie with the country he gave hundreds of millions to, Iran or China, who gave him millions, we know where America's interests lie. And they lie not with Xi, not with the Ayatollah, but with the people in both of those countries that share with us a love of freedom. And they deserve it. And that comes not from Biden, not from me, not even from the Constitution or our founding fathers. That comes from God. So say a prayer for them. And God, bring them to the point where there's a free Tehran, a free Beijing, and they can have the fullness of a wonderful life.
Thanks for joining us. We're still on the air with America's Mayor, Rudy Giuliani.
Of course, God bless America.
And Mayor, as we close out, wanted to say hi to a few people. Again, we had someone tuning in from Tokyo while we were talking about Japan. So
I wonder if he hopefully he comes back tomorrow and tells us if we're on target about the fact that the Chinese are going to find it very disconcerting that Tokyo is going to rearm, or that that Japan's going to rearm. I think they are.
All righty, and so signing off. Thank you, everyone. Mayor, you want to send everybody out?
See you tomorrow night. God bless America, and God bless the people of China and the people of Iran. The people are our friends.